After we got engaged, my fiance sent me a child from overseas. Included was an email. Eleanor. I was so bored that Tiffany and I ended up with a kid. Since you will be my wife, I am entrusting him to you. I turned the child over to the butler, Mr. Davies. 7 years later, Derek Blackwood finally pulled up to the gates in a flashy sports car. Did you miss me so much that you came to wait for me early? Do not worry, I will still give you a wedding. Had no one told him in the past 7 years that I'd married his mafia boss uncle? Seeing my reaction, Derek walked over and slapped my shoulder. Wow. Moved to tears. Keep Tiffany and me happy and you might still get to be Mrs. Blackwood. I almost laughed in his face. Derek, whatever gave you the idea? I'm desperate to marry you. He stared at me like I'd grown a second head. You got engaged to me at 20. You've been raising my kid for years. Who else would have you? Thank God. I dumped that asshole 7 years ago and married his uncle instead. A few years back, when we said goodbye at the airport, he'd held me tightly, promising solemnly, Eleanor, wait for me for 5 months. I'll make something of myself and come back to marry you. Turns out he'd only been gone a month. Then his and Tiffany Reed's child was sent back. They'd been secretly seeing each other all along. The thought of it made me raise my hand ready to slap him. But before my hand could land, a child's voice interrupted me. Mommy. Max suddenly popped out, holding his arms open for a hug. My husband was busy with meetings today, so I was taking care of Max alone. I bent down to pick up Max, but someone abruptly snatched him away. Who are you calling? Mommy? I'm your mother. Tiffany Reed burst out from behind Derek eating and slapped Max twice. My eyes twitched with rage. I spun around and pushed her before she could even fall. She grabbed Derek's sleeve and began to sob dramatically. Derek, I just want the child to call me Mom. Eleanor refused and then tried to hit me. Her cry instantly drew all the bodyguards. I surrounded Max and me while Derek just watched with cold eyes. I shielded Max behind me, grinding my teeth. Are you all blind? You're surrounding me for a mere housekeeper. Do you even know who I am? Enough. Derek snapped, then snuffed out his cigarette and pointed at me. Eleanor, who gave you the guts to talk to Tiffany like that? She's Mrs. Blackwood, the child's biological mother. You not only stopped them from bonding, but you publicly insulted her. Scuffed, pushing his hand away. This child isn't hers. If I hadn't been kind enough to give her a job as a maid back then, she would have starved. Who knew she'd go and seduce my fiancé, trying to claim my son as her own? Derek grew even angrier. He snatched Max from my arms and thrust him into Tiffany's. Max's cries echoed through the yard. You're bad people. Go away. Seeing Max's face red and tear-stained, my heart ached. Just then, Tiffany dropped to her knees at my feet. She stroked the child's small face, weeping loudly. Eleanor, even if you hate me, you can't abuse my child. With that, she pulled up Max's shirt, revealing red marks on his back. Derek's eyes widened, and when he looked at me again, his expression had changed. Eleanor, I kindly entrusted the child to you for practice. I trusted you so much and you dared to whip him. Did you become this malicious just because you couldn't have me? Max's back was covered in parallel whip-like marks, terrifying in shape. Eric couldn't even imagine what kind of life his son had endured these past few years, but he didn't know it was just a high fever. I had taken Max to a specialized pediatric clinic, where they performed a traditional, therapeutic treatment to bring down the fever. A few days ago, Max had a high fever, but due to his sensitive constitution, he couldn't take medication. So the doctor suggested trying the alternative treatment. At the time, even my husband couldn't quite understand the treatment, and he'd had Mr. Davies and even the nutritionists all sent out of the mansion. If my husband knew Derek was bullying Max and me like this now, he'd probably have one of his hands chopped off. Seeing that my people were already streaming through the gates, I was done playing games. I pointed at the two disgusting creatures and roared, take them down. Teach them the Blackwood family rules. Derek's face flushed a furious crimson as he fought off the bodyguards. He didn't forget to yell at me. Eleanor, if you keep acting crazy, I swear I'll never want you. I'll have you thrown out of the Blackwood mansion right now. I sneered. Just try it. These bodyguards were carefully handpicked by Max's dad. With them here, Max and I wouldn't suffer. Seeing she couldn't gain the upper hand, and noticing the bodyguards were wary of Max in her arms, Tiffany's eyes darted around. She immediately gripped Max, threatening, stop now or I'll choke him. Max struggled desperately in her grasp, his face turning from blue to purple. Even his cries gradually faded. I instantly pulled out the small dagger from my pocket and lunged, stabbing fiercely at her. She shrieked and immediately let go. I pounced, quickly helping Max to breathe. Max, don't be scared. Mommy's here. Seeing the child convulsing, gasping for air, I quickly pulled out his asthma rescue inhaler, just about to give it to him. But Tiffany, reeling from her injury, threw her arms around me. She went wild, clawing and biting at me. Derek's face went pale. He bellowed, Eleanor, how dare you? But it was too late. The medicine was already in Max's mouth. Almost simultaneously, the child's convulsions and wheezing gradually subsided. Only then did the two of them fall silent. But Max had been overstimulated and fainted. He needed him for immediately. I ordered the bodyguards to hold them back, then turned and ran carrying Max. Derek's furious shouts exploded behind me. Eleanor, you've made enough of a scene. If you leave, you'll never be my woman again. Like I care, he sneered. So tough. If I don't want you, who else will? Too bothered to argue with a mad dog, I simply gave my orders to the estate. The moment I got out of the car, I immediately sent someone to inform my husband, then rushed Max to the family doctor. Max had woken up at some point. His small hand clutched my shirt tightly, and he didn't forget to comfort me. I don't hurt, mommy. Don't cry. The more understanding he was, the more guilty and regretful I felt. If I hadn't brought him back to the Blackwood house today, we wouldn't have run into those two lunatics. Ma'am, please don't worry. The child will be fine, the doctor reassured me. But just as I placed Max into the recovery chamber, the infirmary door was violently kicked open again. Derek burst in carrying Tiffany. Seeing me, a triumphant smirk flashed across his face. He looked at me with disdain. Just moments ago you said you didn't care. And now you're running back to my uncle's estate. Tiffany cowered in his arms, her eyes filled with venom. Eleanor, do you even know Derek's uncle is a mob boss? If you offend him, he'll throw you to the alligators. With that, Derek put her down, shoved the doctor aside and grabbed me, trying to drag me away. Eleanor, hurry up and get out. Mux, seeing him bully me, picked up a nearby water cup and hurled it at him. Derek's face darkened terrifyingly. He picked Max up with one hand. Are you trying to die daring to throw something at your own father? Seeing Max scream hysterically, his face turning blue and purple again, I struggled desperately, slapping Derek across the face. Let go of my son. Tiffany grabbed a nearby sterile cotton pad, intending to gag me. Keep your voice down. If you disturb his uncle, we'll all be punished. She suddenly went mad, unleashing a burst of strength I didn't know she had, knocking me to the ground and clamping the cotton pad over my mouth. Tiffany and I began to fight. Amidst her shrieks, Derek looked at me utterly stunned. Eleanor, I thought you had some upbringing. That's why I let you take care of my child. But look at you now. You're like a maniac. From today on, Tiffany and I will raise Max ourselves. The words had barely left his lips when he suddenly let out a cry of pain. Mux, seeing me being bullied, was desperate. He bit down with all his might on Derek's hand, right on the web between his thumb and forefinger. Max had always been incredibly attached to me. When he was 4, he'd use his tiny fist to try and scare off stray cats for me, standing defiantly in front of me, his voice a sweet, determined squeak. Don't you dare bully my mommy. Seeing Max drenched in cold sweat, but still refusing to let go, I felt both proud and heartbroken. I was about to snatch the child back, when Derek yanked my hair and violently flung me away. Eleanor, you turned my son into a bastard who doesn't recognize his own parents. Don't hit my mommy. Seeing me thrown to the ground, my forehead bleeding, Max screamed hysterically, ready to bite again. But Derek saw right through him. He squeezed Max's jaw, then looked towards Tiffany in the corner, applying constant pressure to Max's face. Bastard, your real mother is right there. She's not my mommy. You're bad people. Max stiffened his neck, his mouth bloody and bruised, tearing and biting at him. Derek completely lost his patience. He roughly threw Max to the ground, placed his foot on the child's chest and smirked. This kid has been completely ruined by Eleanor. He doesn't even recognize his own parents. All right, fine. This is a perfect opportunity. Today I'll teach you how to apologize to your parents. With that, he pressed down harder with his foot, grinding it into the child's chest. Max's muffled whimpers of pain echoed through the room. Let him go, you monster. You don't deserve to touch my son. I shrieked, my voice raw, clawing towards Max, tears of blood in my cries. He's having an asthma attack. Can't you see? He can't breathe. If anything happens to him, Derek, you're dead. Derek scoffed as if he'd heard a joke, then twisted his head to glance at me, then at Tiffany, who was disheveled and covered in blood. A cruel glint appeared in his eyes. Asthma? Can't breathe. He doesn't even recognize me anymore. Why should I care if he lives or dies? With that, he yanked Max's hair, forcing him to kneel. The poor child couldn't even stay kneeling. He couldn't even scream for help. I charged at Derek like a mad woman wanting to tear him apart, kicked me to the ground, then grabbed me and forced me to kneel before Tiffany. The child was ruined. Ultimately, it's your fault. Get down on your knees and apologize to Tiffany. I was held down tightly, my head slamming against the floor. Blood ran down my face, mixing with tears from my eyes. I stubbornly remained silent, glaring at him with cold fury. He pulled a dagger from a fruit bowl, brandishing it before my eyes, a meaningful smile playing on his lips. Just apologize and I'll consider forgiving you otherwise. Before he could finish, I spat a mouthful of blood at him. Derek was completely enraged. He wiped his face, then roughly yanked my hair and contemptuously patted my cheek. Don't blame me for being cruel. I gave you a chance but you refused it. Then he looked down, kicked Max's side and sneered coldly. Watch closely. This is the first lesson your father is teaching you. The blade in Derek's hand caught the sterile light of the infirmary, a sliver of cold silver aimed at my throat. He was laughing, a jagged, arrogant sound that grated against the rhythmic, wet gasping of Max on the floor. See, Eleanor? This is what happens when you forget your place, Derek sneered, leaning his weight into my shoulder, forcing me deeper into the cold tiles. You're a caretaker, a nanny I promoted to a fiance. Did you really think my uncle's house was yours just because you lived here? You're a guest, and your time is up. Tiffany giggled, a high-pitched manic sound. She was preening, smoothing her disheveled hair as if she'd already won. Derek, honey, don't kill her yet. I want her to watch us take Max to the main villa. I want her to see me sleeping in the master suite. I looked past Derek's shoulder. I didn't look at the knife. I looked at the heavy mahogany doors of the infirmary. The silence that followed wasn't empty. It was the kind of silence that precedes a landslide. The guards outside, the ones Derek thought were his, had stopped shouting. The scuffling had ceased. Then the click. It wasn't a loud noise, but in the quiet of the room, it sounded like a gunshot. The electronic lock of the infirmary was being overridden from the outside. Derek frowned, spinning around. Who the hell? The doors didn't just open. They were thrown back with such violence that the handles embedded themselves into the drywall. A man stood there. He wasn't wearing a flashy sports car's leather jacket or a trendy suit. He wore a charcoal gray overcoat, his silhouette broad enough to block out the hallway light. His eyes, cold as a winter grave, landed first on me, bleeding on the floor, and then on the child gasping at Derek's feet. Alexander Blackwood, the dragon of the East Coast. My husband. Uncle Alex. Derek's voice shifted instantly from a predator's growl to a sycophantic whine. He dropped the knife, the blade clattering away. Uncle, thank God you're here. This woman, this housekeeper you hired, she's gone insane. She kidnapped my son. She even tried to stab Tiffany. Alexander didn't move. He didn't speak. He simply unbuttoned his overcoat and handed it to Mr. Davies, who appeared behind him like a vengeful ghost. Derek, Alexander said. His voice was a low, vibrating bass that made the glass jars on the shelves hum. Step away from the boy. But uncle, he's my son. I was just disciplining. I will not say it again. Derek, sensing a shift in the temperature of the room but too stupid to realize the direction of the wind, took a step back, but he made the fatal mistake of trying to pull Max up by his arm. Alexander was across the room in a blur. It wasn't a fight. It was an execution. He didn't use a weapon. He caught Derek's wrist, the one that had held the knife, and there was a sickening crunch of bone. Derek's scream was cut short as Alexander's other hand gripped his throat, lifting the younger man off his feet until his toes dangled inches above the floor. You, Alexander whispered, his face inches from Derek's. You sent your bastard to my wife because you were too cowardly to raise him. You left her for 7 years. And then you come into my home, lay hands on my wife, and stomp on the chest of the boy I have called son, since he could crawl. Derek's eyes bulged. His face turned a mottled purple. Wife, he wheezed. Alexander dropped him like a piece of trash. He didn't look back as Derek hit the floor gasping. He knelt beside me, his large, calloused hands incredibly gentle as they cupped my bloodied face. Eleanor, he murmured, his thumb wiping a tear from my cheek. I'm sorry I'm late. Max, I choked out, pointing to the child. He can't breathe, Alex. The inhaler. Alexander looked at the doctor, who was trembling in the corner. If my son is not breathing perfectly in 60 seconds, I will burn this clinic with you inside it. The doctor scrambled. Within seconds, an oxygen mask was over Max's face. Tiffany, realizing the nightmare she had walked into, tried to slip toward the door. She didn't get far. Mr. Davies blocked the exit, his face an expressionless mask of professional loathing. An hour later, the main hall of the Blackwood estate was lit with a cold, oppressive light. Max was upstairs, sedated and stable, under the watch of 3 private nurses. Derek and Tiffany were forced to kneel in the center of the room. The flashy sports car Derek had arrived in was currently being crushed into a cube in a scrapyard 10 miles away. I didn't know, Derek sobbed, his broken wrist cradled against his chest. Uncle, she never told me. I thought she was waiting for me. I thought you were just looking after her. Alexander sat in the high-back leather chair, a glass of scotch in one hand and my hand in the other. I had a bandage on my forehead, but the fire in my heart had replaced the fear. You thought, Alexander began, taking a slow sip, that a woman like Eleanor would wait 7 years for a boy who couldn't even handle his own scandals? You sent her a child as a burden, Derek. You intended to break her spirit so she would be a grateful, silent maid when you finally decided to come home. Alexander leaned forward, the shadows carving deep hollows into his face. But you forgot one thing. I don't like waste. And I don't like people who touch what belongs to me. He's my biological son. Tiffany screamed, her voice cracking. You can't keep him from us. That's kidnapping. I'll go to the police. I stood up then, walking over to her. I looked down at the woman who had spent years hiding in the shadows, waiting to steal a life she hadn't earned. The police? I laughed, and for the first time, it sounded cold. Tiffany, look at the paperwork. When Derek sent Max back, he signed an unconditional guardianship form, naming me as the sole legal protector. He was so bored and so eager to be rid of the mistake that he signed away his rights. And 3 years ago, when Alexander and I married, he legally adopted Max. I leaned down, whispering so only she could hear. Biologically, he's yours. Legally, he's a Blackwood. And in this house, biology doesn't mean a damn thing compared to loyalty. What are you going to do to us? Derek asked, his voice trembling. Alexander stood up. He walked to the fireplace and pulled a heavy, iron poker from the stand. He didn't heat it. He just weighed it in his hand. The Blackwood family rules are simple, Derek. You know them. You were raised with them, even if you were too soft to learn them. That which you take must be repaid in kind. Alexander looked at Derek's feet. You stepped on my son's chest while he couldn't breathe. You used your status to humiliate my wife. Alexander turned to his head of security. Take them to the basement. Not the one for guests. The one for debtors. No, uncle, please. Derek screamed as the guards dragged him away. Tiffany was hysterical, her fingernails clawing at the marble floor until they bled. Alexander watched them go, his expression unchanging. Then he turned to me. The coldness vanished, replaced by an exhaustion he only ever showed in private. Are you okay? He asked. I will be, I said, leaning my head against his shoulder. Once they're gone for good. They are gone, Eleanor, he promised, kissing my temple. They just don't know it yet. Tomorrow, the world will find out Derek Blackwood has been disinherited. Every cent he spent, every debt he ran up overseas, it's all being called in. By the end of the week he won't have enough money to buy a loaf of bread, and Tiffany will find that no housekeeping job will ever hire a woman with a criminal record for child endangerment. Epilogue: A new dawn. The sun rose over the Blackwood estate, casting a golden glow over the gardens. Max was sitting in bed, propped up by pillows, eating a bowl of fruit. He looked pale, but his eyes were bright. Mommy, he asked as I walked in. Yes, baby. Is the mean man gone? I sat on the edge of the bed and tucked the hair back from his forehead. He's gone, Max. He's never coming back. No one is ever going to hurt you again. Alexander appeared in the doorway, carrying a small, wrapped box. He walked over and handed it to Max. Inside was a heavy, silver signet ring, the Blackwood crest. This is for when you're older, Alexander said, his voice firm but kind. To remind you who you are. You aren't a mistake and you aren't a burden. You are a Blackwood. And we protect our own. Max beamed, clutching the ring to his chest. As I looked at my husband and my son, the memory of Derek's flashy car and his cruel laughter felt like a dream from a different life. He had come back expecting a broken woman and a discarded child. Instead, he had found a queen and a king who had built a fortress out of the ruins he left behind. The Blackwood gate stayed closed that day, and for every day after. Because inside, the family was finally whole. And outside, the world learned never to touch the dragon's treasure.